my name is Chip Kidd. I would call my title a graphic designer. I'm also a writer, and I work for Penguin Random House here in New York City, which is one of the biggest book publishing firms in the world. And as a matter of fact, today, October 8th, 2020 marks my 34th year that I was first hired here at this company. And I have been working there ever since. And more specifically, the area of Penguin Random House that I work for is called the Knopf Doubleday Group. That's Knopf Doubleday Group. That is the division of Knopf that I work for. And so my role within the company is several. I design book covers. I acquire what we call graphic novels, the books of comic books, and I also write and art direct. So I love it. I would not be here for 34 years and counting if I didn't love it.
So can you talk to the kids about, like, when you were growing up, were you really into like art? Were you into creative writing? Like, what kind of drove you academically when you were a kid?
There was all sorts of things creatively that excited me as a kid. I was also very, very heavily into music. I still am. And when I say heavily into music, what does that mean? I played the drums from age, I'd say 12 all the way up through college, quite actively. And so I really, really enjoyed that. That's like, I think that there's different creative parts of your brain that can feed the other parts. And I think definitely learning to play music helped my visual sense of design and proportion. Like, if you're looking at a piece of graphic design or creating one, you're definitely making a form of rhythm, and you're pacing it out in a certain way. I mean, when I was a kid, what we now call graphic design really wasn't in what you'd call common language base. Like, it wasn't what we would say now is it wasn't really a thing yet, even though, of course, practically it was a thing. Graphic designers have existed since cave drawings. But in terms of like studying that at school, I wasn't really introduced to it as something that maybe you could do for a living until I was in college. But that said, I was always drawing, painting, making stuff. My parents were very encouraging in terms of all of this. But it was when I got to college and I learned that there was a class called Introduction to Graphic Design. That's when I really started to see graphic design as something that would be a way to do something creative with my life, but still have a job, a profession that would be valued by society and pay a salary, and it seemed like a viable means to make a living and still do something creative.
Great. Do you mind if we let some of the students ask you questions?
Sure.
So we have Mev in Italy. Mev, you should be able to unmute yourself. Hold on. There you go.
Okay. Allora. Okay, fine. Hi. Hi, Chip. I'm Mev. I'm from Italy. And my question is, even if you have a lot of work experience, do you feel comfortable when you design something? Or do you think that maybe what you're drawing can like to someone? Because I mean, when I draw something, I always think, yes, I like it, but maybe someone else can say, what are you doing? This is not good. So you're not afraid of what others may tell you. I mean, you're really famous. So when you design, don't you feel like you have to do things that people will like, or you just follow your inspiration?
It's a very good question, and I will tell you an all too true story. Last night, I did a series of book cover designs, which are for a book on the history of British computer science, and I sent them to the editor and the editor-in-chief, and this morning, I got an email saying that they didn't like them at all, and I had to start over. Uh, this happens to me, and you know that is sort of part of the job. And I know what you're saying is like if you making a drawing is kind of different than making a piece of graphic design, but it's a creative thing, and they're both creative things. And I think what we, if you want to be in the design business or world, or what we call the commercial art world, you are going to have a client. Now, in my case, my clients I work with all the time, the editors and the writers. And you know, either for better or for worse, I am making something for them. And if what I am making for them does not meet their needs of what they think it's supposed to do, then it's my job to figure out why they don't like what I'm doing, what they need me to do that's different than what I'm doing, and then try to do that. And sometimes it's painful, and annoying and upsetting. I think in this particular case of this thing I'm working on right now, it's a what we would call a history book. So it's a factual history, but what the editors want is they want it to look like it's what we would call a spy thriller. And at first I was resistant to that, but I'm starting to understand why they want that, which is because I think if they think it looks just to what we would call like dry or boring history, not fewer people are going to pay attention to this book than if it looks like there is what we would call intrigue involved. And there is intrigue involved. It's a very interesting story. When these guys during World War II in Britain were trying to break a code from the Germans, in order to figure out where, like, how the strategy of the Germans during the war. And so that's a very real, true story. And it is exciting. It is interesting. And so I was just showing the computer that they made. And now what I really have to think about is trying to give it a sense of secrecy and urgency that it didn't have initially when I made that design. So, you know, even after all this time, just because I'm designing something doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to like it. And this is part of the job, and this is part of the dialogue. But I think what I have to do, and what I think we have to do when we are in these situations, is we have to see starting over as an opportunity to do something better than you did the first time. And that's actually a kind of metaphor for life in a way. We're constantly failing, but that you can't see the failure as an end. You have to see it as a beginning to go on from that and do something better.
It's awesome advice. We have a question from Sierra in Nevada. Cool name, Sierra in Nevada. Go ahead, Sierra. You're unmuted.
Hello. So what was your favorite book or book cover that you've worked on?
Well, again, I'm very lucky. I've been doing this nonstop for 34 years. I've lost count of how many books. There must be over 1,500 of them by now. That I'm sure of. So there's a lot. There's a lot of them that have become my favorites. But I think the one that I will probably be best known for is Jurassic Park. Because I drew the dinosaur that became the image for the movie logo, and I love that book. It's just it's an amazing book. I'd say more recently I do a lot of book covers for this Japanese writer named Haruki Murakami, and I very much enjoy his writing and working with him and making things for him. And I love the books. I mean, really, I'm very lucky because of the place that I work, Knopf Doubleday Group, which is part of Penguin Random House. We publish very, very good books. And I enjoy reading them as much as I enjoy designing them.
We have a question, ironically, from Sierra's teacher, Miss Donato. Miss Donato, you should be able to unmute.
Good morning. So my question is, can you explain the process that you go through from beginning to end? Like, do publishing companies come to you? Do you just have an idea and hopefully somebody picks it up? Like, what's the process that you go through? Okay,
very good question. The process is, like I said, I'm on staff. I have a salaried job at Knopf Doubleday. So there's part of what I think is really the great part of that is that we have 3 publishing seasons a year. And right now we're working on summer of 2021. And it's just an automatic, steady stream of books to work on. So what I get a manuscript, which during this time is all electronic. They send me a PDF of what the book is, and I read it. And that's the way it's always been. You read the book, and but now that's all books are different. All authors are different. All expectations for these books are different. So sometimes you can talk to the author, and which always helps. Like I think, if the author is available to talk to and wants to talk about what they would like for their book and their cover, I'm happy to do that. And sometimes they're not. But as I'm reading, I'll either be taking notes or mental notes about themes in the book, or possible visual angles for whatever it is, and then you have to translate that. You have to get that out of your head and, frankly, onto the screen or onto the page, and then you kind of take it from there. I mean, all graphic design can be broken down into content and form. So the content is what I get first. It's the manuscript, and I'm reading that, and then I have to decide what form that's going to take. Content is what something says. Form is what it looks like. And I'm oversimplifying it, but your form is what you're studying when you're studying things like color theory and composition and typography. What do different typefaces make you feel as a reader? What do they imply? All of this goes into what I'm going to try and present as, here's what you're going to see before you start reading this book. And then, of course, there's Will it have an illustration? Will it be just typography? Will it have a photograph on it? Is it a true story? Is it a not true story at all? I.e., is it fiction or nonfiction? And I think going back to this British computer thing that I'm working on, it's nonfiction, but I think they want it to actually look a little like fiction. I think they actually want it to look like it's a spy story. It's crafty and there's danger involved. And again, all of that was true. It was crafty and there was danger involved. But I have to figure out how the reader's going to perceive that. But all of these projects are very different, and which I love. I mean, if I was working on the same kind of thing all the time, I would get bored, and I'm not. But all of the different classes that you guys are going to be taking are going to inform how you work to make a piece of visual information.
Thank you.
We have 3 more questions, and then we'll let you go. I'm sorry we're going a little bit over.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Like I said, I'm happy to give you as much time as you want.
You know, one thing I think that's so amazing about what you do is I didn't realize there was such a science behind it with the color theory and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely fascinating. So
Yeah.
we have a question from Samuel in Nevada. Samuel, you should be able to unmute. Go ahead and ask your question.
What's your favorite part about your job?
Wow, that's a good question. What's the favorite part about my job? There's a lot. I actually love that I'm literally working on at least 10 different things at once. And I love that because, and also our deadlines in book publishing are spaced out. So like I said, we're working on summer 2021. So we have the luxury, frankly, of time. So that as opposed to if you're in a job with very sort of stressful deadlines, like we need it tomorrow, and a lot of jobs are like that. It's hard to work on more than one thing at once. Now I'm only concentrating on one thing at once, but I think what happens is your subconscious is thinking about the other 9 things at the same time. And I'm talking in abstractions, but if I get stuck, like I'm stuck on the British computer thing, I have 3 other books that I can work on in the meantime, and I've got a couple of days, so I can like put that aside for a bit, work on something else, and then come back to it, and you can. I think your brain and your subconscious is still working on whatever that other project is, and then when you come back to it, you start to see things that maybe you didn't see before, or think about things that didn't occur to you before. But I think just from the like, what do I like about my job in terms of like the graphic novels, the new one, like this just comes out this week, is a graphic novel I published by a guy named Pat Dorian. Lon Chaney Speaks is about it's a biography of a real person who was a movie actor way, way, way long ago in the 1920s. And it's a book about his life and his work in the movies. And he pioneered the art of theatrical makeup, which didn't really exist until then. And so I was the editor and the art director and the publisher for this book, and this was just me I went to Comic-Con 3 years ago, and there was this guy who had a table, and he had these little drawings and little booklets of Lon Chaney that he made just because he was a fan. And then I said, well, would you ever think about making an entire book about his life, and it's like his face lit up. He said that would be really cool, and so eventually a lot has to happen for that to happen, but it happened. And so I mean I love that. I mean, and so there's lots of things like this that I've done by now that it's very much exciting not to bring a book into the world as opposed to just doing the cover. I love doing the covers. I will always be doing the covers, but to bring actual books into being is really exciting.
That is so cool. So we have Matteo in Italy. Matteo, you should be able to unmute, my friend, and you can ask your question.
Hi. Hi. My question is, how did you get the opportunity to design a Jurassic Park logo?
Okay, so the question is, how did I get the opportunity to design the Jurassic Park logo? And the answer is, it was a book that we were going to be publishing. Knopf Publishing published Michael Crichton from the very, very beginning of his career. His first novel that he wrote, and he was a genius. The first novel that he wrote, he was in medical school. He was a student, and the book was called The Andromeda Strain, and it actually had a lot to do with what we're going through right now, and I won't go into that. But anyway, it built his career steadily through the 1970s. Westworld he did, and so I was relatively very young. I think I was 25 or 26 years old, and my boss calls me into his office and says, we're going to be publishing this novel and it's going to be called Jurassic Park, and it's Michael Crichton's new novel, and here it is, read it. And so, I read it, and then we just took it from there, and I did a bunch of things. I did a bunch of stuff that did get rejected, because you're dealing with dinosaurs, which everybody thinks they know what they did look like, but I think one of the things that Crichton was doing in this book was to say, well, actually, no, that a T-Rex didn't stand way up on its hind legs. It sort of crouched over a bit like a bird, because dinosaurs actually evolved from birds, and when they were running, they were like, it was like a bird running. So it wouldn't run like that. It would run like that. So, and I'm getting into way too much detail, but what I started studying actual dinosaur skeletons. I went to the American Museum of Natural History on the Upper West Side of New York. And if you can come to next time you can come to New York, you can go there and you can see the skeleton, and you can see the way the skeleton is lit from behind by the window it's next to. I was sitting there on the bench, and the light was pouring through behind it, and it didn't become a dinosaur skeleton anymore. It became a silhouette of a dinosaur skeleton, which seemed to be much more interesting than just the bones themselves. I don't know if this is making any sense, but so I started sketching it and thinking about it that way, as a shape of a real thing that's somewhere in between a dead thing and a living thing. And it just kind of went on from there. But the book cover became that drawing of that version of a dinosaur skeleton. The book came out, it was a big success, and then Universal Studios was going to be making the movie, Steven Spielberg, and they wanted to buy the rights to that image for the movie. We didn't know at the time what they were going to do with it or what they wanted it for. They just wanted it, and so they bought it. And anyway, that was the beginning of the evolution of that. And I did a TED talk that really goes into the details of the whole thing, if you wanna check that out.
Yes, that was a really good TED Talk that you guys can pull up on YouTube. And before we let you go, as these kids kind of go out in the world and discover what they want to do in their lives, can you give them any advice on how they should go about that as somebody who's like a leader in his field?
Well, I will try. I think there are certain aspects of graphic design that, I mean, I've been doing it for 3 decades now. There's certain aspects of it that have changed in that time, but all of those aspects, I would say, are technical. So it's going from drawing things by hand to Xeroxing them to then computerizing them, and et cetera, et cetera. But what has not changed is the fact that you, as a designer, as a creative person, you need to come up with an idea out of your head. And the machine can't do that. Like, none of the tech can do that for you. That's a thing that only you can do. And if you can develop those skills to do that, which I developed in school, I very much needed to go to design school. Because I had very good teachers who would give me assignments and then teach me how to think differently about things. And I think more effectively about them. If you can develop those skills, where I came up with this idea for this thing that nobody else would have thought of. If you can develop that skill, which is what school is for, that's in your own way is going to be your job security, if that makes any sense. Because a machine is only going to help you get to where you want to go if you tell it to. It's not going to tell you, oh, you should do this or that. And you know, there's all this talk of AI. There will always be this talk of AI. But in terms of creativity, no. That relies within the human being, within the human heart and the soul and the brain, and all of those working together to make a piece of art, to make a piece of creative, to make a piece of creative work. And I think, you know, we're always going to need that. Society is always going to need it, and it's going to need it from human beings, not machines. So, you know, I think just everybody keep going. I know, and things are really tough right now for all variety of reasons, but I think they're, you know, I think they're going to get better. And in the meantime, you can develop these skills, you know, anywhere, as long as you have, you know, good teachers and things that you get inspiration from, and all of that. But I do think that the design process, the creative process, lies within you. It doesn't lie within a computer or a screen or a device.
Well said. And before we wrap it up, if the kids want to learn more about you, they can go to chipkid.com. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, they can. I have a person who updates my website. And sometimes it's really up to date and sometimes it's not. I mean, there's that. I have a Facebook page, I have a Twitter account, and I have an Instagram account. And other than that, if you go on YouTube, there's a bunch of videos. There's the TED Talks. I did a couple instructional videos on like the history of the book, and yeah. I mean, if you poke around, you'll find stuff.
Absolutely. I think all of our kids worldwide are pretty good at navigating the internet. So if you guys want to learn more, you definitely Google Chip Kid with 2 Ds.
One P, 2 Ds.
Well, yep, 1 P, 2 Ds. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody before I end this meeting. So can we all say thank you to Chip for helping inspire and educate us?